Green bean.
What's up?
What?
What?
Ooh, that was weird. Nothing. What's up? What's up with you,
We're
buddy?
having internet issues, which we like to
Ugh,
do when guests come on.
it's our favorite activity.
We think that's fun for our guests. Tech problems.
Tech problems. It really sets the tone. I feel like it gets them really relaxed and ready to share on the episode.
You know what it does is it's like it convinces them immediately, oh, this is a bullshit
This
amateur
is
hour moment, so I don't have to be nervous.
and this isn't going to go well.
This particular guest is not going to be surprised that there's some chaos going on here because she's lived with me her whole life. Can you guess who it is, Bean?
I'm going to guess it's your fairy godmother.
Wow. No, it is my sister,
Your
Mojgan,
sister.
who is also a somatic coach, and she's here today to talk to us about how trauma lives in the body and how we can heal it through somatics.
Yay.
Mojgan Besharat, welcome.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here. Thank you, Mory. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank
I'm
you.
really happy to be here with you guys. Yeah, I'm
We
excited.
Feels good.
have been very excited to have you. You're also an avid listener of the show. Do you have any notes for us? Anything
Yes.
you want to give us feedback on?
Constructive
in live
criticism.
and living color?
No, I think y'all are doing a really
Living
beautiful job.
color. Oh,
That's
spoken like a
fun.
true sister.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, there's a
Yeah,
little
a
soundtrack in
supportive-
the back, which I really love from Melissa. In living color.
I want you to know
can
there's
do
always
what
singing
you
on this
want,
show.
You can do in living color. Yeah.
That's where J-Lo got her
Everyone-
start. For all of
Oh,
the
right. She
younger
was a fly
listeners.
girl. Fly girl. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's where I'm
she
going to
was-
get my start. It's a fly girl. I'm going to be the fly girl on this podcast. Sorry.
Sister,
Continue.
you've listened to this podcast enough to know that we like to start before we introduce you and what somatics is. And by the way, listeners, I think you're in for a real treat because
Ooh.
once I really wrap my head around somatics and how the body holds on to trauma and how we can be thoughtful about healing that trauma, it's been life-changing for me. It really has been something that's transformed the way I have healed and processed stuff. In fact, Bean, you asked me, I think in our last episode, what happens when you're going through change and it's hard and you have to, try to move through it. And I was saying that I use all kinds of different healers to help me process the fear stuff that comes up when you're going through change. And somatics is one of those things. So I really think this is going to be one of those episodes where people are going to walk away with a lot of information. But before we get serious, we got to do Mojgan, our cringe and delight. This is where Bean and I regale each other with the last week or so and something that either delighted us or cringed us out. Do you have one? Do you want to start as our special guest?
Ooh, Moshe is doing it? Oh,
Wow,
that's
you're
fun.
getting me
Let's
to
do it.
start? Wow, what an honor.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
Let's see. Thanks, sister. I have a delight, I think.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Share it. Do share.
Please. Yes.
For this week. A delight for this week. I think my delight for this week is going to come across so simple, but it's just essentially because we've been having really bad weather over here, and Melissa and I were talking about this earlier. It's been really lovely to have a day where it's been really crappy outside and raining like crazy, which really makes my whole system get really sad. And then the next day to be outside and it is so cold, but the sky is so blue.
Today?
And that to me is just life. That was yesterday.
Oh,
and the
nice.
day before we had crazy weather.
Yeah.
So I think, Mory, this will kind of remind you of something about maybe our nervous system and our biology of growing up in Colorado, because Colorado is so sunny.
Yep.
Right? When it's cold. And so for me,
Yep.
it's a really delight to experience cold and sun and blue sky.
Oh, that's special.
That's beautiful, sis.
That was really
You're
beautiful.
right. I think that I always found it hard to be depressed in Colorado, despite the fact, I mean, I was a little kid, so that's probably part of why. But also because it's literally sunny every day in Colorado, which is, it makes
Wow.
a huge difference.
It's
So I
sunny
moved
every
to
day in
sunny
Philadelphia.
California.
Wow.
I love it. Well, sister,
Yeah,
that's so delightful.
I really like
Bean,
that.
what you got?
Mine seems much more superficial and silly compared to hers. I was just going to share that I got keratin yesterday and I didn't know that you're not allowed to wash it out. And as a result, for the 3 people watching YouTube, that's why my hair looks like this. That's
It
my
looks
cringe.
great, actually. I was expecting you to look like a
Look at
greasy
this.
little
It's not greasy.
brat.
They like flat iron it in, but then it's just like your hair is like. That's all.
Yeah, what made you decide to get keratin all of a sudden?
I've been
At this
thinking about
stage
it
in
for
the
a
game?
long time, and then I just did it this time. I don't know. I just wanted to give it a go. I like to try new things.
But do you
Have
find
a
your
good
hair
time.
particularly frizzy? Like
Oh yeah,
what are you trying to solve?
I get that like Jew frizz, and especially when it's like raining and weird, my hair just like,
Really?
yeah. Come on, do you know me? Have you not met me?
Is that what the point of
I don't
keratin
see
is?
your Yeah. Keratin
Okay.
is like a protein that they iron into your hair that shines up your hair, which I need because I have, the thick Persian hair. But I
So
never
Why are you
experienced your hair
hating
as
on
frizzy.
it?
But anyway,
That's because I always am
I'm
done up
happy for
around
you
you
that
because
you've
I got
gotten
to
your
keep
keratin.
up because you're always done up.
Well, you look
That's it.
fantastic today in your cardigan, although I can't see you because your internet's funky. All right. Well, thanks for
Anyway.
asking. I'll go.
How about you?
I am delighted. Okay, so our mom, not your and my mom, but my sister and my mom is here visiting with her best
feel like
friend.
she's a mother
Zahra.
figure to
They're
me.
really cute. Okay, sure.
Uh-huh.
So our mom, our collective
mom.
mom, is here visiting with her bestie. They are so cute.
Love.
They literally giggle and talk all day long. They were laying out by the pool yesterday, just talking, gossiping by the pool. They then had tea. They play cards. They're super cute. But okay, that's not my delight. It's so nice. It's so nice to have them here and my mom here because she's so helpful. But sister, get this, and Bean, you'll relate.
Thank you.
Yesterday, so I made an appointment for this afternoon to get a tattoo and to take her with me because what I want is for her to write the word freedom in Farsi, which is azadi, in her handwriting, and I'm going to get it tattooed on the back of my neck. And because freedom is my greatest value, and
Can I ask?
double
Can I ask
meaning
how she feels about that?
Sure. Well,
Okay,
I'm getting there.
Oh,
This is the delight, Bean.
Part of the delight. It's coming.
So double meaning is that it's my way of standing in solidarity with the women in Iran who are fighting for their freedom every day, and to have my mom's handwriting on me. Anyway, all of this to say, our mom is anti-tattoo. Like, sister, how would you describe her feelings about tattoos?
Same as my mom.
Why you want to do that?
Solid impression.
You said it nicely. She's usually cursing you out in Farsi, being unacceptable.
Bichot. Useless.
Yeah, useless. The whole thing is useless.
Useless.
So I tell her I want to do this. She's a little intrigued because it's her handwriting. And then I forgot that I hadn't shown her. I have 2 new tattoos on my wrists that are my kids' constellations of, their signs. Yeah. So I was like, oh, Mom, actually, look at this. And I showed her my tattoos and she's like, what are those? And I explained them to her and she smiled and she goes, oh, that's so lovely. Tattoos. She called them lovely.
Look at
I know.
Good job bringing our mom to the current state of being.
Right?
More
78
open.
is not too old to
Get
expand.
In. Oh my
We're
God.
very
did I
proud
tell
of
you,
Mom.
Speaking of, did I tell you my mother saw my tattoo that I've been hiding
I
for
knew.
her for years? Did I tell you?
It was bound to happen. What happened?
She wasn't even that mad. She's like, I knew you were doing it.
I told you.
You were right. I was convinced she was going to
I told you.
slaughter me. And she doesn't even get mad, but I was like, this will throw her over the edge. She doesn't like it, but she was like, oh, what does that mean? I was like, I don't know.
I tried to explain to you. Wait, did she see the moon or the birdies?
She hasn't seen the birds. She doesn't know they're there.
Oh, awkward.
It doesn't matter now. The jig is up.
Well,
the jig is up.
Debbie, check out that left arm next time you see Melissa. That's what my mom said. She's like, how many is too many though? Are you going to get a sleeve? I was like, she doesn't know what a sleeve is, but she's like, is your arm going to be full? And then I was like, oh yeah, I have this other one. And then if I get this one that you do, then it'll be 5. She's like, 5 is too many.
Do it on
So,
your
anyway.
Didn't you know that you already calling it a sleeve, which I find really delight in? Actually, that is a delight for me. When you're like,
Yeah.
let me show you my sleeve. And I'm like, what? And then
That
you're
would be
like,
awesome.
Mojgan had
so
a good
cute.
laugh.
I was like, okay, sister, that's a good sleeve.
Did you call
You
it
know
a
what,
sleeve?
sister? I said
She
it's
did.
like a sleeve.
Swear to God.
Can
I
you
swear
stop
to
calling each
God, she
other
called it a
sister?
sleeve.
I want to be part of it. You called it a sleeve?
I
Bean.
said it's like a sleeve. Okay, whatever. Mojgan, you're out. Goodbye.
It's cute. I'm not saying
Yes, I'm
it's
still in.
delightful. Your best friend is making fun of it. I thought it was
Yeah,
cute, but you
100%.
call it a sleeve. But
I'm
let me
making fun of you.
just give you this. I think for having a mom who was so anti to then for you to have as many, it is like an accomplishment, like a sleeve
Right?
in terms of, 100%. Like I can
you.
appreciate what you're saying.
That
Moj,
is such
you
an
don't have
older
to-
sister
Yeah,
dynamic where
totally.
she has to make me feel better now. She's like, I'm
Totally.
on your podcast and your best friend's now making fun of you. And now
And
I've
it
got
worked.
to celebrate you.
Aw,
You were like,
no,
thank
I mean, I
you,
get
thank
it.
you.
I get it. My mind gets it. But
Well,
I
you know what?
thank you.
I'm glad you just did that because I think you just showed everyone
Uh-oh.
why you are
We
such
have
an
freezing
incredible
happening.
person to be coaching and healing people because you're such a deeply feeling,
Oh.
loving individual. And I'm lucky enough that you're my older sister and I get this every day. But let's get into how you do this for people through somatics. What do you think? Shall we? Did you like that transition,
go.
Bean?
It
A
was
plus?
killer. It was sick.
Dive.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I forgot we were doing a podcast. I thought we were just talking.
You're just catching up with Mojgan.
Yeah, I was like, hey, Moj, great to see you.
All right. So, Mojgan, I want you to
James.
start by explaining, and I just want to remind you, because you're the expert, that this is like really break it down for us in 101. I want to hear from you what somatics is. Like, how would you define it? But then, more interestingly, how did you find your way into somatic coaching? Because it was not a linear process for you. So tell us about that and tell us what it is first.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think when we say somatics, I think it just sounds like what? And I really like to make it as simple as possible. And I would like to call it embodiment. So if we call it embodiment, we can relate to it better. And so if we think about what we embody our bodies, which have parts. We embody our minds and our thinking cognitive selves. And we embody our spirit selves, our energy.
Is that her
So
or
that
me?
is what.
Hold
No,
on.
it was her.
Damn. Okay. I'm not sure because Mory and them froze a minute too. I can see Mory, I can't see Melissa.
Fuck. She's choppy on my end, and everyone else is clear.
And
No, but then she supported me.
I
Then she supported me.
It was delightful.
I didn't even know
It
what
was
happened.
delightful.
Don't listen to Anais. Don't
And
listen
I
to
was
Anais.
like, oh,
Don't.
it is my fault.
What? Jesus,
You're right.
You're a fire starter on ice. What the fuck, man?
Thanks for sticking up for me.
What?
Okay, everyone's back. Sister,
All
I'm
right.
going to have you answer that question again from the top.
Uh,
But we got to. Okay, go ahead. And
right.
Melissa's gone.
So think about, well, she's here on my end.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
God,
so think
frozen
about
at the worst
somatics as
picture.
embodiment. Embodiment is like, what does your body hold? Your body holds all its parts. So you have body parts. Doesn't matter
We do
whether
have body
it's like,
parts.
we all have body parts, even those of us with limited abilities in our bodies, right? We have in our bodies our heart and our spirit selves. We embody that. And we also embody a cognition or an awareness or our minds that makes meaning, right? And so that is what somatics is about. It's about kind of bringing all of that into alignment for the sake of what we long for, to transforming into that. So it's a practice methodology, as we can think about it, or a tool.
Repeat back what I heard and you tell me if I have it right. Actually, Bean,
Yes.
You do it. What did you hear?
Oh no. I heard that we're all body, we're a whole body, and this takes into account all parts of your body, not just your physical being, but your spiritual being and your emotional being, and it's all parts of you that are working together in unison, so you have to kind of get them aligned. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. Okay, good. That's what I
Good.
heard too.
Great. I
Yes.
appreciate that you asked her because I feel like that's relevant.
Yeah.
So, sister, what does that mean when we are humans that walk through the world and collect negative experiences or trauma? How does that affect that system in somatics?
Okay, that's a really big question. So we can break it down really simple. First of all, we are biological beings, like all living beings. That would be plants and animals. Okay. And in our system, we are designed for survival, like all living beings are. So when we encounter places in which there is, in this episode, we're talking about trauma, which is like the biggest thing that causes us harm, right? Our system, our nervous system, is designed to contract. So it causes contraction within all parts of our bodies. And because we're also an emotional beings, we can have contraction in our emotion. Because we have thought processes, it can inform our thoughts. And so trauma informs because it's an experience we have that lives in our body because we experienced it with our whole beings.
Mm-hmm. And when you say a contraction, what does that mean specifically?
Yeah. So let's just first start with a roly-poly. I think we've all had an experience with roly-polies, the little critters. And when you touch them,
critters,
they're little cute little critters.
Such a cute word.
That when you touch
they're like,
them,
wait, explain them though, if someone hasn't seen one. It's like a worm, right?
roly-poly is like almost like a centipede or a millipede that doesn't have any sort of venom for us, right? So there's no harm for us to do any sort of interaction with them. They're safe, yeah. And if you've ever, as a kid or as a curious adult, ever come across a little roly-poly with a little hard shell and they're really small, and you touch, and they're just kind of walking, they're doing their little walk, and then you touch them, they immediately curl up into like a roly-poly, like a round little thing that's all curled up in and of itself. That's its natural instinct to survive. So for us, when we experience some form of trauma or we've seen violence, we also then will curl up. And that doesn't mean necessarily physically, but maybe internally there's a curling up that happens. And so we're not at the most relaxed and open state that we normally are when we feel safety, connection, and belonging. Something's been interrupted.
Can I interrupt and ask a question while it's top of mind? So when you experience that trauma and it becomes part of your being, does it ever go away on its own, or you from that moment on are living with that level of trauma somewhere in your body?
Yeah, what a great question. I mean, that's definitely part of if it's usually, unfortunately, with trauma, if we don't address it and recognize it and process it or metabolize it, that energy, the flow of energy that should exist in us or that does exist in us naturally, which is that we have a thought, there's a rising, and then there's like a coming down. So that's a natural flow of like almost a wave. That's how our energy is. When we experience trauma, there is an interruption of that flow. So we have to energetically in our system, in our nervous system, in our psychobiology, work that through for it to go through. And if we don't do it, it just stays stuck in wherever we are holding it. Whether that's in our mind or our heart or our different parts of our bodies. Yeah.
That makes sense. I like the way you described that. That was really clear. I want to ask you, before we go further into trauma in the body, because I think it's really important, what I want for our listeners, and I'm hoping they're thinking right now, is like, okay, well, what do I do about it? So before we get into all of that, which is what somatic coaching helps to heal, my theory is that we don't get into a life's work unless our life has been a road of experiencing the thing we're here to heal. And you work a lot with people on healing trauma. So I was just wondering if you'd share a little bit of your story around how somatics came to be something you decided to devote your life to, and why, and how meaningful it is to you based on what you've experienced in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is just, I appreciate this question because it is really the heart of the work, and it is the why. So I, growing up, experienced all sorts of different types of harm and violence, whether that was, family harm, and also state violence in terms of the war that was happening in Iran and that we were part of. And then just sort of the trauma of being disconnected and leaving behind people that you feel safe with in the midst of all of this violence, to come to then being so isolated and experiencing trauma in the home. So there's lots
isolated,
of that.
come to the US, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Leaving Iran, coming to the
United
US.
States.
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe background is she was born in Iran and grew up there until what age?
So effectively we left when I was 11.
So that's a long time.
There was already a war going on.
Right.
Yeah, and there was already, the revolution had already taken place. So there was a lot of change that was happening.
And I think Mory's referenced a lot. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Mory has referenced her mother's experience a lot on this podcast. And the truth is you were there as well and experiencing the same level of disconnect from everything you knew and coming to a foreign land and not having a support system in place, just like your mom.
Especially in your developmental years as a child, there's so many studies and so many awesome people out there who've done beautiful research around PTSD. And so for me, what I came to recognize is that a lot of my experience has been, and a lot of the way I was moving through my life was around survival. I mean, honestly, I would say even up to my 30s. It took me a very long time to recognize how long I was in this really state of just doing for the sake of surviving. And the coming out process for me, identifying as queer and really being able to stand up for myself was the first beginnings of the thawing, I would call it, of me coming into myself. And it's just been a continuous growth from there. So for me, what really has aligned in somatics is how much it has helped me come back to my whole self, and that my whole self meaning this connection back to my sense of safety that I am self-responsive around, that I'm not looking for external to make me feel safe. It's around that connection to others and feeling like I belong because I simply am worthy of it. And then also
that's
just
like
this really...
That's my ultimate wish for all of humanity. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. It's liberating. It's liberating to come to a place where you recognize you can be whole, and then you can make choice from that place. Absolutely. And having choice is such a big thing, because when you grow up with trauma, you don't have choice. A lot of things are what they are. There's very, very little consent, if ever. There's so many things that interrupt us when we are experiencing trauma or seeing violence, or living in oppressive states, right? Express.
This is very heavy because I can feel all of your emotions being.
Oh yeah.
Which is different.
Feeling me listening to her.
Yes. And then I'm feeling it, the same thing.
Beautiful. Yeah, but look at that collective experience of being in this really present, listening with each other and allowing our systems to feel. This is part of our makeup, is this connection that we can have collectively. This is also how we heal.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I don't want to give away too much because I write about this in the book and I want you to read it.
Go buy
it. Go buy it next year.
I'm going to be your book fly girl.
Bean's doing a cheer for
A
those
book
of you that
reading,
aren't
Fly
watching
Girl
us.
Dance.
No, but I think that it's emotional for me because obviously I love you and what you've been through is hard to hear, but also because, you know, you talk about everything up until you turned 30. But 30 was hard in itself.
Mm.
And your coming out at that age was an experience for me that was really edifying about standing in your truth and how not just courageous, that's obvious, that's a given, how dedicated you have to be to that truth, no matter what people's reactions are, and how that experience in itself created trauma for you, which I was a part of. So I want to ask you, you know, I think that we talk about healing in this way right now in our culture that sounds very linear and very like, and then I did this thing and then I found this
I
practice
talked to my
and then I was great.
therapist. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of my goals for this podcast is to demystify this process where people are in the shit of it while they're healing and thinking there's something wrong with them because the healing feels so circular or is taking so long, or sometimes you feel like you went back 20 steps after a year of healing. So can you talk a little bit about how in the process of becoming a somatic coach, you had to do so much of your own healing? What was that like for you in that process? And how did that affect your relationships with other people? And, you know, it wasn't, I can say from watching it, it wasn't linear and pretty and, you know, A equals B equals C. So tell us a little bit about like the muck of it.
Yeah. It's true. You're absolutely right. Healing is not meant to be linear, because things are happening in layers for us. So I think the best way to explain it is for me, to become a certified coach, I had to go through my own healing journey and a really deeper understanding of what this process, this methodology is about. And so really getting into the muck of just kind of unpacking, which can happen in stages. And so, you know, it's rebuilding the sort of space of where I felt safe enough that I could look inwards, experience what I needed to experience, and then feel like I had a little more softening happen. And then in that space, in that openness, I was able to then look again at another area that felt like there was a wound. And so it's a constant. Are the dogs barking in this very loud or no?
It's fine. We are pro dog on this podcast.
Yeah, we're pro dog. Let him bark. Let him shine.
Let him be in it.
Okay, just because they're barking. Yeah, so there's a lot of like unpacking that has to happen. And as you unpack and you get to like, it's almost like the best way to say it is, it's kind of like you're on this climb, right? You're climbing, you're on a hike, and you get to a certain spot and you're like, look at this gorgeous landscape. It's so beautiful. This is your internal landscape. You're like, wow, so much beauty, so much possibility. And then you're like, something happens and you're like, oh, okay, there's still something here that I need to work with. And then it's like, okay, let me continue this climb. So let me climb up even higher. And then you're like, wow, look at this expansiveness. So there's even more opening, this wider landscape you get to appreciate. And then you're like, huh, nope, there's still something down there that I need to go back and retrieve and heal because it's still deep. It's like layers. It's like an onion that you keep peeling back, layers and layers of. So you get to a place where you're like, oh, wow, I feel so good. And I think that is really how the process of healing happens. It's not you said it, sister, it's not linear. It is definitely in these stages and processes in which we open, we relax more, we soften. And in that softening, there is some resilience building in us. We can tap into our resilience, and that allows us then to continue to then heal more in depth. What's still there, because it's in layers. I mean, I can give you an example if that would be helpful.
I love examples.
So you asked, like, you know, what led me to somatics, and it's because I had done, you know, I'd been in intimate relationships before, and I just, you know, this is going to get very, very like intense, but I had some really disturbing situations happen when I was in really deep, intimate situations, and where I would just freeze, where I wasn't able to enjoy any sort of pleasure. And for me, that really was very disturbing. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Oh,
it
wow.
led
That's
me
really
into this
interesting.
path of like, why am I
Yeah.
like, that's not what's happening to my partner. Why is this happening to me? And I'm
Right.
in this really safe relationship with this person where I feel loved, I feel seen, I feel held. So it's not like them, but clearly I just freeze. And it led me through a path of coming to different modalities. I did EMDR, I did therapy, and then I did somatic therapy. And that really enlightened my like knowing of like, oh my God, there's so much inside of my body that I'm holding here. And so it led me into somatics. And in somatic coaching, like the certification process, that was the biggest thing that I healed, was this part of myself that had experienced harm in a physical way that really took me to these places where I would just freeze in intimate relationship, and how I would show up. It really helped me see, wow, like I'm really appeasing, which I really want to appreciate you all covering, because it is a trauma response in which we fawn or appease because for the sake of feeling like we're lovable. But
Mm-hmm.
what we then risk is our own safety, our physical safety, just to feel like we can be loved or belong. And so it just
Mm-hmm.
helped me deepen into that healing process, because it is a journey to really bring all parts of ourselves into a wholeness, because trauma compartmentalizes us, it isolates us for the
Mm.
sake of survival. And that means
Mm.
that we're not really fully experiencing ourselves wholly. And so just kind of coming back to, it helped me come to this place where I really felt like, wow, my whole journey in this life is this is the commitment I have, is to healing collective trauma for the sake of embodied joy and liberation, because it is absolutely liberating to not be held hostage to these experiences that live in the body, that keep us from experiencing true connection with another being that's our intimate partner or our family that we choose or the family that we're born into. It's what keeps us from being able to create, like, our traumas and the things that we hold sometimes keep us from being able to make really like grounded requests from someone that feel very centered.
Mm-hmm.
Our trauma is what keeps us from being able to set boundaries that keep us intact, meaning our dignity, our sense of safety, our belonging, that's
Mm-hmm.
all intact, and that you're also looking at the other person and holding them as well in that place. So it's so beautiful to be in a place where you can have freedom and liberation to be able to move through the world feeling connected and part of, feeling like you're worth it because you are,
Mm.
and that you are re-establishing safety for yourself from the inside out. Because
Right.
when we have trauma, we're looking for safety externally, and really to become to heal, to become intact, we have to redo it from the inside out. We have to make that happen. We have to be self-responsive for our own safety.
I feel like that was
Wow.
such an impressive explanation of what somatics is and its role it can play in your life. I did have a
It was
question.
beautiful.
It was so beautiful, really
Yeah.
touching, and
Very well
really,
said, sister.
yes, very well said.
Thank
Um,
you.
I was just curious if, going back to the part about you being able to be intimate, which was just a small part of the whole thing, just using that as an example, once you are able to work through that and you discovered where that trauma lied in your body and you were able to heal it, is there I know that all types of therapies it's a continuation. You can never
Mm-hmm.
just stop and say, I'm healed, it's great. So I understand that. But in that particular situation, once you heal that aspect of yourself and you're able to be intimate and connect again, do you have to continuously do work on that aspect of yourself? Or is that something you can sort of move past at that point?
Brilliant question. Um, we're never moving past, we're always moving through.
Moving
And
through. Better.
because it always lives in us, because it will always be there, um, we just learn to metabolize it and shift it and change it and how we show up. And it's still there because it is what has informed us. It is part of our shaping. It has shaped us for so many years of our lives.
You can't.
So just
Yeah.
speaking from myself, that sort of experience, right, informed me for so many years of my life
Right.
until I looked at it and I shed a light into it. And just think about then how much I had done and maneuvered around it, right? So it's so much part of my being that you just don't, because now you're shedding light into it and you're healing it. It doesn't just go away. You
Right.
heal it enough so that you make
Operate
choice,
differently. Yeah.
that you operate differently, that you have transformation, but that your transformation as a human being is a continued process. There's really never an ending, so to speak. And so maybe that feels like wah, wah, but at the same time,
No.
it can be such a beautiful exploration of
Yeah.
but like I said, a landscape that you haven't ever seen or experienced in yourself.
I feel like even this is so not the same, but I feel like even getting into my 40s, which I was dreading and feeling weird about, has given me like a different perspective. So it is like a light, you're just constantly learning and growing. And I did want to share that I met you that right after you came out. So I was like there for that bit of turmoil in your family and how everybody was responding. And I can say I have seen your evolution over the past, I don't even know, how long ago was that?
20
years. I have seen you evolve and soften in so many ways. I will say when I first met you, you had way more, I'd say, barriers up. And
Right.
we've spent a lot of time together over the years, and I've watched you soften and sort of ease into yourself.
Thank you. That's a beautiful reflection.
Everything she's saying, I can attest.
That's a beautiful
Look at
reflection.
bestie and
Thank you.
sister. This is should I leave?
Bye.
You guys want some alone time?
It's Signal with Moj and Melissa.
And sister, you asked a question I want to come back to, is that how has it shaped my relationships?
Yeah.
I really do think that when we transform, we recognize we have choice, and we recognize what matters to us, and the boundaries we're able to set that feel so much more intact to us and others. It's not a disconnect, but it's a connection to myself and someone else, that my relationships are more real, that I'm able to be my truer self, which I feel like I always was, but even more to a place of that feels a lot more engaging and soft. I feel like the relationships that don't work for me, I just don't choose to put as much energy or continue in, because it doesn't serve me in this place of wholeness. The relationships that want to keep me small, that want to keep me less than, the relationships that want to diminish my being or want to be a power over, I choose to walk away from now, as opposed to trying to appease to be part of. So there's so much change that comes about. And so there's a lot more choice in the people I choose to have really deep connection with, and people that I choose to have this very shallow, and I don't have a whole lot of shallow relationships, because they don't fulfill me.
Yeah. You've got no time for that.
No, I think all three of us are similar in that way, actually, where that doesn't feel good. I just want to say again, what you just said, it hit so clearly, which is the relationships that I was in to appease as a way to belong are no longer going to serve me, because I don't. Say it again. Say it one more time. You said it so beautifully.
I don't choose to be in these relationships where I have to make myself small or appease to belong, because I don't need that sort of affirmation from someone else. I already know in myself, because of the healing journey that I've been on, and is that I'm enough. There's an enoughness in me that I experience that lets me then informs me that I don't need to make myself small just to belong. So I don't want those relationships.
I think that's so important, because I tell people this all the time who are on any healing journey and are afraid of what that's going to mean for their current relationships.
Yeah.
That, either, listen, you're expanding. That's your priority. you're never going to choose your contraction in favor of someone's comfort or love or validation. Again, that's the priority. And as you expand, you are creating an opportunity for them to either expand alongside you or move out of the way so you have more room to stretch. And either way, even though it's frightening in that moment to think about it, you're actually so much more in your truth and therefore happier on the other end of it, whether they're alongside you and have expanded or they've gone away and have given you room to grow. You're much happier for it on the other side of it. Would you agree that that's been your experience?
Absolutely. And I just don't want to make it so simple either, in that it is a
Yeah.
process that we're always in, and it's always a question that we're in the relationships, especially the ones that we care about, especially the ones that we derive a sense of deep, deep connection and safety and belonging in, is that it is a process, because we also have to hold in this that the other person also has their own set of circumstances and own set of conditioning that they're coming in with. So what I can say about the process in somatics is that it really is allowed for discernment. It allows for like a deeper appreciation of like receiving and understanding from a place of like, where is that person coming from? And do they mean me harm, or are they in a place where they themselves are experiencing their own set of like contractions and reacting from that, or their own set of trauma that's kept them in the survival mode, and that's where they're coming from because something triggered them. And that is such, it's a process. And this is what we call, it's never progress. It's I'm in process. And this is what it is.
I love that.
So like appreciating that we are all in process, all of us. And like, how does that then build our ability to be more compassionate with each other? Like, I really appreciate the empathy that we need to be able to recognize, oh, I'm feeling some other person's pain. But the compassion piece is, what do I need to keep me intact and keep them intact? What's that compassion look like? Right? How do I show up with compassion here?
Yeah.
So I think my role here is always on this podcast is to sort of make things a little more tangible and more easily digestible for like the average listener who may not have as much knowledge, much like myself, on a lot of these different types of therapies and more spiritual approaches to something. So my question to you is, how does the average person even begin to recognize where they're holding on to trauma in their body? You know, I'm sure it's totally not on most people's whatever have you radar to even check in with their body physically, to try to become more aware of what's going on with them internally. So what would you say to somebody who's listening to say, just to get an idea of how to kind of an intro into somatics for themselves?
Oh, this is such a great question, and it's so many layers thick.
Oh no.
It can always start with, first of all, let's just be really honest. If for those of us who've experienced trauma, sometimes it's really hard for us to connect to our bodies.
Exactly.
Because our body is the place where we experienced it and where we're holding it.
Right.
And so
you're
we
avoiding
tend to
it.
pop out. We tend to pop out of our bodies as a means of not feeling. So experiencing limited emotions, right? The range of emotion that we allow ourselves to feel, whether that's joy, immense amount, or depths of sorrow. So that being able to have emotional range, sometimes some of us are really like tight in our range. It could start from as simple as that. It could be the way that paying attention to how much am I aware of my own self versus how much am I like this, tracking for any sort of danger or any sort of tracking to make sure nothing is going to come at me. Right? So sometimes we're just so outside focused tracking that we're not really able to connect back in to ourselves.
Bean, do you know somebody like that? I feel like are we both thinking of the same person right now?
Yeah, maybe. I just wanted to clarify that she said pop out, not pot out.
Oh. or pot out, however you need to handle it.
Well, yeah, no, but that's our survival mechanism. So a lot of us are in our survival mechanisms and aren't recognizing that that's where we are, right? But how do we tap into like knowing that maybe perhaps is to check our satisfaction level. Check how connected we feel, because we are beings that need connection to others. How connected do I feel to another person or
That's
others?
a great way to check in.
How do I feel? And then another way that we can just kind of pay attention is when I walk into a room, how safe do I feel? Am I looking for external factors of safety? Am I looking to see where the exit sign is? Am I looking for somebody that feels safe to me? Or am I able to generate safety within myself? Which is a concept which not too many people like are familiar with. So there is lots of things that we do in somatics in terms of our practices that really allow us to become more informed about what's happening for us, that then allow us to then navigate how to work with that, how to heal some of these parts.
Woo! Listen, that was a lot. I don't know that we didn't even get into how to do any of the practices. So maybe because you incepted this idea into us and told us this was going to be 2 parts, maybe because it was our own idea, Bean, I think it was our idea.
Totally. We run the show
what we should do is, if you're willing to come back next week, AKA we keep recording right now.
And just air it next week.
And let's do a part 2 on the practical day-to-day practices that we can do to help find some of these contractions that you just really beautifully outlined, and what we can do to start to get curious about healing them in a practical way in a part 2. What do you think, sister?
I'm open to that. Universe already let me know this was going to go down.
Okay, you don't have to gloat right now about your intuitiveness on this intuition podcast.
This podcast was all about intuition. What?
It is just Mory's.
Celebrate
mine, just mine.
Listen, every being is intuitive. We just tap.
That's right.
Tap in.
Well, sister, thank you for laying out such a beautiful foundation.
It really was.
And for being so vulnerable and honest about your own pathway here. I just think that you can't be a teacher unless you're willing to walk the path first. And I think you really laid out that you have done that. So for those of you that are curious about how to actually apply this stuff, Mojgan is going to share with us next week some practical tips, and I hope you'll join us then. Until then, have a great week, everyone. Don't forget to support us by sharing this podcast and leaving us a review anywhere you listen. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.